All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the National Intelligence Council's Global Trends 2040 forecast. It's a dense 140-page document, but we're going to break it down into a really clear, manageable roadmap of our future. Now, since this is published every 4 years, it's essentially the intelligence community's crystal ball, designed to help us prepare for what's coming right over the horizon. So let's unpack all this complex data and turn it into a focused, highly accessible journey.
Look, we can't talk about global trends without addressing the elephant in the room first, the COVID-19 pandemic. When we're mapping out our future, we have to recognize this virus as a massive, world-altering catalyst. It was literally the most significant singular global disruption since World War II. It fundamentally shook up all our long-held assumptions about resilience, global interdependence, and honestly, just how fast the world can change overnight.
Because the pandemic wasn't just a health crisis, right? It was this intense accelerator. On one hand, it rapidly sped up exclusionary nationalism, massive spikes in national debt, and deep global inequalities. But at the very same time, it acted as a brutal decelerator, tragically slowing down or even reversing decades of hard-won historical progress in poverty reduction and gender equality. Resources that took generations to build were just suddenly consumed.
So, to map out exactly how we get from here to the year 2040, here is our agenda for today. We'll look at structural forces, then emerging dynamics, scenarios for 2040, and finally, the adaptation imperative.
Let's jump right into Section 1, Structural Forces, the tectonic plates of our future. Beneath our feet, we basically have 4 unavoidable structural forces laying the foundation of our future. Let's start with demographics. By 2040, our projected global population is going to hit a staggering 9.2 billion people. But here is the paradox. While we are obviously adding more people, the actual rate of population growth is slowing down almost everywhere. So we're moving toward a heavily populated world, but one that is drastically shifting in its makeup. Let's unpack that shifting makeup a bit. The global median age is creeping up to 35, meaning we are becoming an older planet overall. Now, while developing regions like sub-Saharan Africa are going to see massive population booms, developed nations are facing a serious aging crisis with rapidly shrinking workforces. And geopolitically, India is set to completely overtake China as the most populous country around 2027. You guys, this isn't just trivia. This is a total realignment of global human capital and economic muscle. Now, throw economics and fast-moving tech into the mix. Staggering national debts and fast-diffusing technologies, especially artificial intelligence, are going to drastically reshape industries and the very nature of global power. Tech is being invented, deployed, and discarded at a pace we've never seen before. Whoever successfully harnesses these AI productivity boosts, they'll unlock massive economic opportunities. But those who lag behind are going to face severe economic constraints and intense social disruption. So, what does this all add up to? The collision of these structural forces creates what the intelligence community calls disequilibrium. In plain English, our collective problems, things like climate disruptions, complex trade shifts, rapidly advancing tech, they are simply outgrowing our traditional institutions. Our existing organizations, alliances, and rules are really struggling to handle the sheer weight of these overlapping crises. Which leads us directly into Section 2, Emerging Dynamics, Friction and Fragmentation. This is where the rubber meets the road, where these huge structural forces collide with human reaction. Paradoxically, our deeply connected internet and global economy are actually driving something called fragmentation. You'd think being hyper-connected would bring us closer together, right? But it's actually pushing populations into isolated information silos. People are retreating into highly specific, identity-based enclaves, which completely erodes civic nationalism and makes finding consensus incredibly difficult. And you know what this fragmentation creates? A massive governance gap. As we've seen globally, from Beirut to Brussels to Bogota, there is a growing, persistent mismatch between what highly informed, empowered populations demand and what resource-strained governments can actually deliver. Populations have the digital tools to rapidly mobilize, but governments, weighed down by debt, simply cannot keep up. It is a perfect recipe for domestic friction. And this friction perfectly cascades across literally every level of society. At the societal level, we see deep disillusionment and divided identities. Bubble that up to the state level, and you get political volatility and widespread protests. Then internationally, it fuels intense power jockeying, particularly between a rising China and the Western coalition led by the United States.
With no single state able to completely dominate, the entire geopolitical environment becomes incredibly uncertain. So, how does this actually play out? Let's move to Section 3, Scenarios for 2040, 5 possible futures. Depending on how leaders and populations react to all this disequilibrium, the forecast lays out 5 plausible futures. In Scenario 1, open democracies experience a dramatic renaissance. This is driven by rapid tech advancements and public-private partnerships that raise global incomes. Meanwhile, authoritarian regimes like China and Russia end up stagnating under their own heavy societal monitoring, which basically stifles the exact kind of free-flowing innovation they need to survive the mid-21st century. Or we could end up in a world adrift. In this timeline, the global system kind of just loses its compass. Developed countries face political paralysis and sluggish economic growth. China takes advantage of this to expand its regional influence, but it actively avoids taking on true global leadership. The result? Critical transnational challenges like climate change and poverty are left completely unaddressed because, frankly, no one is actually at the steering wheel. Then there's Scenario 3, competitive coexistence. This envisions a fragile but functional balance. In this world, the US and China realize that a major war is simply bad for business. So they restore robust economic trade to prioritize growth, but they relentlessly compete in the shadows for technological supremacy and political influence. It's a world of highly managed tension, where global problems get addressed just enough to prevent total disaster. Scenario 4, separate silos, is quite a bit grimmer. It imagines a deeply fractured globe. The world essentially divides into heavily defended economic and security blocks. A US bloc, a China bloc, an EU bloc. Information flows solely within separate cyber-sovereign enclaves. International supply chains are totally disrupted and forced to reorient for self-sufficiency. Vulnerable developing nations get completely caught in the crossfire, and global cooperation just completely breaks down. And finally, Scenario 5, tragedy and mobilization. This paints a future where things have to get much, much worse before they get better. A devastating environmental or food catastrophe forces a massive, reluctant global coalition, largely spearheaded by the EU and China. To survive, they are forced to literally save the planet by deploying advanced energy technologies and executing radical changes to global wealth distribution. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, the adaptation imperative. Listen, no matter which of those 5 scenarios actually becomes reality, the one absolute mandate for every single nation, corporation, and individual is going to be adaptation. Building societal trust to weather harsh climate realities, cleverly navigating those massive demographic shifts we talked about, and rapidly integrating AI into the workforce, these are the things that will separate the societies that thrive from those that fail. Adaptation isn't just some corporate buzzword anymore. It is absolutely the ultimate strategic advantage in a world defined by constant disequilibrium. So, as we stand on the edge of this highly contested world, the main takeaway from these projections shouldn't be fear. It's agency. The data gives us a map, but we're the ones driving the car, right? The tectonic forces are already in motion, sure, but the destination is far from locked in. Knowing what is on the horizon, which of these futures will we actually choose to build?